Because I never really considered art as a career. And so I also had a strong interest in the sciences. So I ended up going to UC for biology. Was my major. And I was in the pre-medical society, and I started taking art classes pretty much because I was kind of hanging out with a surgeon at the time, watched a few surgeries, and he suggested that I take sculpture, because it's good for manual dexterity and surgical skills. So a few art classes turned into a minor, and then turned into a major. And then, when I was filling out the paperwork to take the MCAT to get into medical school, I was kind of not thinking, and I'm not really sure this is for me. And so I just stuck with art, interestingly. So the Boston School was kind of a group that they actually started the museum school that was connected to the Boston Museum. And it was a group of painters who kind of were melding some new things together. A couple of these guys, so we're talking Paxton, Tarbell, Benson, and DeCamp. DeCamp is is one of my favorites, and he's actually from Cincinnati. And he was one of the Duveneck boys. Looking through, the things that inspired me, I started really being attracted to a lot of the Dutch painters. And one of my favorite painters is actually French, Chardin. And he specialized a lot, he did a lot of still life. And still life is just basically, setting up objects and painting them as you see them. The nice thing about still life is that I have complete control. I can set it up. I can it's almost like I'm a director at some point where I'm a director of the work. I choose the actors, the different objects, the colors, the lighting, and I set it up. I start with the visual, and I start with what is the abstraction and the color arrangements, and am I, creating something pleasing? And then, of course, on top of that, there's story. And so I think my earlier work was probably more focused just on making something pleasing to look at. And I think now I'm starting to move more into, what do these objects mean? How do they speak together? And, so for me, when I'm looking at, a lot of these Dutch masters who were just setting up, wonderful objects. And for them, of course, they were setting up grand scenes of food or, hunting scenes and that kind of thing. And so I'm trying to do that now, but, for our time. So, a lot of times we'll replace, a dead rabbit or a duck hanging on the wall with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that kind of thing. So I start with just a big look, a big impression. And so I'm just basically putting colors on the canvas. So there's usually not much of an underdrawing, if any. It's just trying to get, accurate color, the right value, and putting it in the right place on the canvas is, kind of a simple way of putting how painting happens. So I just basically start putting paint up there and work it slowly into focus. So drawing sort of develops rather than happen initially for me. And for me, it's just been an exploration of kind of, how light hits white objects. The thing about painting these paintings is I'll set up these objects, some of them toys that I have, and, I was just kind of arranging things. And then I was getting out my toys that I have from when I was a kid. And it was almost like I was playing again. So I have a real sort of systematic and, for me, comfortable way of working where I just, sort of look at it and say, okay, well, what's next? So when I paint, I try to make it look as like as I can immediately. So that first mark is hopefully the right color, the right value in the right spot. And then I step back and say, well, how can I make it more like? I would say for me, I believe art should be a couple things. It should be beautiful, I think. And it should also be uplifting. It should make you feel good about being a human.